When I was a kid, the disaster we worried about most was a nuclear war. That's why we had a barrel like this down in our basement, filled with cans of food and water. When the nuclear attack came, we were supposed to go downstairs, hunker down, and eat out of that barrel.
Kid.
子供
Disaster.
災害天災
Worry about object.
目的語について心配する
Nuclear war.
核戦争
That's why subject predicate.
そんなわけで主語が述語する
Barrel.
たる
Like object.
目的語のような
Basement.
近い地下
Filled with object.
目的語で満たされている
Cans of object.
目的語の缶詰
Nuclear attack.
核攻撃
Be supposed to verb infinitive.
動詞原型するはずである
Go downstairs.
下の階へ降りる
Hunker down.
しゃがみ込む
Out of object.
目的語から外へ
Today, the greatest risk of global catastrophe doesn't look like this. Instead, it looks like this. If anything kills over 10 million people in the next few decades, it's most likely to be a highly infectious virus rather than a war. Not missiles, but microbes. Now, part of the reason for this is that we have invested a huge amount in nuclear deterrence, but we've actually invested very little in a system to stop an epidemic. We're not ready for the next epidemic.
Today.
現今現代目下
Risk of object.
目的語の危険性
Global catastrophe.
世界規模の大惨事
Look like object.
目的語のように見える
Instead.
代わりにそれよりむしろ
Over object.
目的語を超えて上回って
10 million.
1000万
The next few decades.
今後数十年
Most likely to verb infinitive.
動詞原型する可能性が最も高い
Highly.
非常に高度に
Infectious.
感染性の感染力のある
Virus.
ウイルス
Rather than object.
目的語よりはむしろ
War.
戦争
Missile.
ミサイル発射体
microbe, microbe,
微生物、病原菌、細菌。
now, now,
さて、ところで。
part of object, part of object,
目的語の一部、一環。
reason for object, reason for object,
目的語の理由。
invest object 1 in object 2, invest object 1 in object 2,
目的語1を目的語2に投資する。
a huge amount of object, a huge amount of object,
大量の、膨大な量の目的語。
nuclear deterrent, nuclear deterrent,
核抑止力。
actually, actually,
実際は、本当は。
very little, very little,
ほんの少しの、極めて少ない。
epidemic, epidemic,
流行病、伝染病、疫病。
ready for object, ready for object,
目的語の準備ができている。
Let's look at Ebola. I'm sure all of you read about it in the newspaper. Lots of tough challenges. I followed it carefully through the case analysis tools we use to track polio eradication. And as you look at what went on, the problem wasn't that there was a system that didn't work well enough. The problem was that we didn't have a system at all. In fact, there are some pretty obvious key missing pieces.
Ebola, Ebola,
エボラ出血熱を引き起こすウイルス。
be sure that subject predicate, be sure that subject predicate,
主語が述語すると確信する。
read about object, read about object,
目的語について読む。
lots of object, lots of object,
たくさんの、数々の目的語。
tough challenge, tough challenge,
困難な、厄介な課題。
follow, follow,
観察する、見守る。
carefully, carefully,
注意深く、慎重に。
through object, through object,
目的語を使って、手段として。
case analysis, case analysis,
症例分析。
tool, tool,
手段、方法。
track, track,
追っていく、見守る。
polio eradication, polio eradication,
ポリオ撲滅、根絶。
go on, go on,
起こる、発生する。
problem, problem,
問題、課題。
work well enough, work well enough,
大変うまくいく。
not at all, not at all,
全くない。
in fact, in fact,
実際に、実のところ。
pretty, pretty,
結構、かなり、なかなか。
obvious, obvious,
明らかな、明白な。
key, key,
鍵となる、重要な、寛容な。
missing piece, missing piece,
欠けている部分。